Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Nick, your host of On the Scene with Martini. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and don't forget, you are the scene.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Nick on the team Martini. Today I'm here with Sammy from all your favorite bands that you that you know about. How you doing, Sammy?
I'm chilling. How are you, man? I just made the connection. Is your last name Martini?
Yeah, yep.
Is it really?
Yeah, just like the drink.
That's amazing. On the scene with Martini. It rhymes. I love it.
Thank you.
How are you?
I
Thanks for
appreciate
having
it.
me.
Great. I'm super excited. Thank you so much for coming on. I know you've been busy with all your touring. You don't really
Yeah.
seem to ever get a break, so I appreciate you spending your break with me for a
All
little
good,
bit.
man. My pleasure. Of course.
Just as always, I just kind of want to get started. Just how did you get into music and like what was kind of your introduction to the hardcore scene? Because you were a little bit younger, I feel like playing
Yeah.
wise.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I grew up in New York City, downtown in Manhattan, like on 15th Street. And so, New York, you're exposed to a lot. People say you grow up faster there, or this or that, but also having an older sister, she's like 3 years older than me. She kind of turned me on to music, gave me records, this and that. Um, and then also my dad is a drummer and my grandfather was a drummer. So there was a drum set in the house. So I would just start kind of like looking at that and messing around with that. And then somehow, I guess kind of early on, I probably got my hands on a Kiss record and just like that, all the like imagery of that, and joining like the Kiss Army and just like explosives and music. I was just like, wow, this is exciting. Like there was a show called 321 Contact on like Channel 13 when I was a kid, and I remember like they went to like a Kiss concert like behind the scenes and like how the pyro works and all that. And it was just like all very like, you know, just gradual, like of that's exciting. And then kind of shortly after getting kind of exposed to punk, probably through my sister, like Blondie and Devo, and then like into the Sex Pistols and getting Nevermind the Bollocks and seeing movies like Suburbia and like Repo Man. And that had a similar thing. Punk was just like visually exciting, musically exciting, like just the whole bit. And like kind of quickly, I got into a punk band because I started playing drums, because of my dad and stuff, and I was into it. And my sister got me into a band called Noise Police, which was sort of like punk and reggae and ska, but also sort of hardcore. They covered a Power by Agnostic Front, and so that was my first sort of like introduction to New York hardcore. And and then just through friends, like kind of met someone who needed a drummer, and I started playing in this band Side by Side, and then we met the guys in Youth of Today, and it just all kind of happened gradually, but I guess kind of fast, at the same time.
When you were younger then, how old were you when you were in your first band?
So that was like I was probably like 11 years old when I was in Noise Police, and then probably like 11 and maybe I mean 12. I joined Gorilla Biscuits in 1985, so I was born in 73. So that's what, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old.
Yeah.
So I was 12. I was in GB. I played one show. They kicked me out. I wasn't that good. But then shortly after, I joined Side by Side. And then we recorded the song Violence to Fade for the Together 7-inch comp on Revelation. So that was all like 12, and then from then on, 13, 14, it was just like we were all really good friends and everyone kind of needed a drummer. So yeah, I ended up joining Youth of Today and then eventually Judge, and then we did Project X, and then I did the first Shelter recordings, and like just sort of we were all friends, and we were into hardcore and we were into the scene, and that was it for me.
Being younger, did you feel like it was more difficult to get like involved in this scene? Because I know like now there's a lot of like 21 plus shows, 18 plus shows. Was that ever an issue or did they kind of like ride for
Um,
you a little bit?
yeah, a little bit. I mean, my mom and dad and sister all would take me to shows. They were supportive. Like CBGB's was 16 and over. So for those years when I was 12, 13, 14, 15, really wanted to go, like they were really strict. This woman, Karen, kind of ran the door. And if you had a fake ID, which we did, she would like quiz you on it and bust you. And so, my dad would take me to CB's. There was on West 11th Street, there was the old Ritz, which became Webster Hall. And I have like ticket stubs from 1984 and 85 of like GBH and the Bad Brains and a bunch of different tickets and shows. And my definitely my mom or dad would have to take me to that. Like they wouldn't let me in. But as far as like the scene, like the Anthrax and the Pyramid and some of that stuff, those that was all ages. And so that yeah, there's no real issues with that really.
Gotcha. And then like when you're in like youth of today, like Ray and Porcell, are they a little bit older than you at that time?
Yeah, so yeah, I was gonna say in a way being young and being the youngest one like kind of made it easier in a way because they were sort of like my big brothers. And so my parents were more inclined to, let me go on tour and kind of do all that. Like I they would my mom, our house on 15th Street, because a lot of these guys like lived sort of out in Queens maybe or Connecticut or New Jersey. So like my house was kind of like the clubhouse a little bit. My mom was really cool and would, feed people and just really chill. So like when Billy from Side by Side, he broke his, sorry, there's a plane flying over my head, but
Oh, you're good. You're
he
good.
broke his leg. He lived in like a 5 flight walk up. So he ended up staying with us for a while. I think Gavin might have stayed with us for a little bit, but just different people. So anyway, so through that though, my mom would really become friends with them and so trusted them. And like Purcell specifically was sort of like my older brother. Like he and I were really tight. So it happened gradually but fast, like I was saying before, where, I went to, I think one weekend it was like, I'm going to Buffalo. And my mom was like, all right, well, call me 4 times, 5 times, here's some money, like da da da, blah blah blah. And then it was like, okay, I'm doing that again. And then I joined Youth Today in 87 and we went out to California for a week and played Fenders with Uniform Choice in 7 seconds. And that was like a week. Wow, that was a big deal. And then that summer in 88, we toured the US for 2 months. And that was a big deal. So again, like, but it happened, you know, gradually where my mom and my dad were able to kind of like trust these guys. And yeah, we were straight edge. So that helped.
Yeah. Did you find it difficult with in the beginning kind of balancing with like school and like just kind of being a kid yourself, like having like friends in your own age group and then playing all these different bands? Because now you're in a ton of different bands, but even it seems like when you started, you kind of went into that quickly, like playing in a ton of different
I mean,
bands.
I went to so I was going to these schools and yeah, I was balancing it and I was like after school I would like go to rehearsal or something and on the weekends we'd rehearse and most of the shows were on the weekends. So it did sort of just work out or most of the touring was kind of like during a winter break or something. So it there wasn't really a conflict. Although after 1988, that summer tour with Youth of Today, I came back and I went to this private school at the time and it went out of business. They like ran out of money or something. My mom was like, your school went out of business. So I knew a friend of mine went to some school called PCS. It was like Professional Children's School on 60th Street. And it had a lot of like professional like actors. Like the Cosby kids went there and like Macaulay Culkin and like different
Mhm.
people. So they allowed you to go on correspondence. So basically these kids could work from like their set and just, come in every 4 months and take a test or something. So it was very flexible where most other schools, would fail you. So I ended up going there just because there was also like just regular kids that went there and but coincidentally Youth Today that winter went to Europe for like 2.5 months. And so that was like February, March. I turned 17 on that tour. And I was like on correspondence. So I would do my homework and I'd have to FedEx it back to them. And it was very like it was cool though, because we'd be in Germany, we'd visit like a Nazi concentration camp and I'm learning about World War II at the time and or being in Rome and learning about the Roman Empire, but being actually in Rome and like so it was really cool. I still failed, I think, math and Spanish that year, but that school allowed me to kind of still do it, um but again, like back then in the day, these bands didn't play that many shows. There was a summer tour, maybe a winter break tour, and some weekends. Later, when I was in Civ and we were signed to like Atlantic Records and we were touring, like we toured 8 months out of the year, one year. And even now, like where hardcore has grown, which it has, like it's global now and stuff, like the touring, I'm pretty busy because I play in a lot of bands, but also because there's just more shows, there's more fests. Like there weren't really fests back then the way there are now. I mean, there was a thing called the Super Bowl of Hardcore in New York that happened maybe like once or twice a year, but there was no like yeah, not the way it is now.
What was it like being on your first tour? Like, was it nerve-wracking at all for you? But also you said like your dad and your grandfather was involved in the drums. So drum has been in your blood for a while. Was it kind of just like another practice, or like what was your approach to shows
It was
then?
kind of like, I mean, again, like I was like 14 and 15s or and then like 16, so just like it sort of felt like going on a class trip a little bit. Like it was an adventure and it was fun. It was not really stressful. I mean, a little bit, of just that kind of grind where you start to get sick of each other and then you start to get on each other's nerves and you might like just that stuff can creep up on you when you're touring. Now and then back then, especially when you're younger, and the age difference between someone like me who's 14 and then you get like a Ray Capo or some of those guys who were probably like 18 or 19. Um, so that's a big thing, just
Hmm.
being the difference more so then. Um, but no, it felt really like it was fun. I mean, the really looking back, the really weird one, you and I were talking about squats earlier, but like that tour in Europe in 1989, Youth of Today, it was like 2.5 months in the winter in Europe, and it was probably like 80% squats. So like these, warehouses, buildings that were taken over by like punk and hardcore kids to just do put on shows and just kind of, really run it. Like that was it was fun, but looking back, like it was crazy. Like just being in a van, just driving in the winter, like the promoter totally ripped us off. Like we made no money. He'd book us 2 shows in one day sometimes. Some days the shows would suck and people would be spitting on us and throwing shit at us. And like literally like a beer bottle coming flying at me. And then
Jeez.
other shows would be insane. I mean,
Yeah.
there was no blueprint. There was no real straight edge scene. So we were sort of kind of, pioneers in a way with that. But again, at the time, it was fun. It was just like I'm with my dudes, we're hanging out. It's and play music.
Going back to the Gorilla Biscuits, I never realized that it was only one show until they kicked you. Was it truly a bad show, or did they just?
It just wasn't that I was really young, and I think that they ended up getting, I think, their drummer Ernie back, who Ernie played in Token Entry, and he was really good. He was a little older. Um, I gotta like remember even what that show was. I think it might have been the Right Track In, and it was a show there called the Birth of Unity show. But then later in 1991, I joined Grill Biscuits again, and we went to Europe, and I played like some other shows with them. So, it was just there was a little bit back then of like some rotating members. Warzone had a bunch of different members. Youth Today had a bunch of different members. Like it just kind of happened whether for whatever different reasons, availability or, this or that. But yeah.
Did you feel like after being at a young age, I know like for me, it would be like if I didn't make the soccer team or like I got benched, I would be like pissed. I would feel like this is the end of the world. Did it ever feel like that? But you kind of looks like you got into bands and other,
I really don't remember that one being really like dramatic at all. It seems sort of natural, and I think I quickly met the guys in Side by Side and was in that band.
yeah.
Um, which might have even been part of the reason why I didn't do Grill Biscuits anymore. I mean, but at that point, I mean, they already had a drummer, this guy GM2, I think was their first drummer. This guy from Queens, George Megasopoulos the second. Then they had Ernie and me, Luke. Um, so no, I mean, it just like yeah, it just quickly pivoted into like Side by Side, which was just like that was sort of really like my first band. I mean, I was just so into it. Like I would make like the banner and like work with this kid who made stickers and like I was just like really into it the way a 13-year-old would be into it. It's almost like again, I guess like a kid's sports team or something where you're just like so psyched, like yes,
Yeah.
this is like I'm all about this. Um, because yeah, again, you think about it, like it had everything back then. I mean, and probably now to an extent too, if you're 14 or 15 into hardcore or young. but it was just like it had this danger element to it, had this camaraderie, unity thing. The music was good, some was better than others, um and we were making stuff. Like we were creating, we were writing songs, and we were making t-shirts, and our friends started a record label, and our friends started a fanzine, and we were making flyers, and so like that element to it is fun. It's creative.
Did you feel like it was difficult to have a say, especially like again, like I'm not trying to reference like being young the whole time, but just like from the beginning, did you feel
Yeah.
like it was more difficult to have a say in like lyrics or merch or like you were kind of just like there to play the drums? Like, you know what I mean?
I mean, at the time, I think being so young, like, especially with the band like Youth of Today, like, I was a fan of Youth of Today. I had the Can't Close My Eyes 7-inch and Break Down the Walls album, and then I got to be in the band. It's like, holy shit, this is amazing.
Hmm.
I was just psyched to be in the band and really try and be the best drummer that I could be and, like, write and play the best drum parts for the songs that I was involved in, Word on Salone, Disengage, and stuff like that. And I knew the burden was a little more on the older guys and Ray, the frontman specifically. I mean, he took a lot of the heat. He was a force and he was the frontman and he was in people's faces and like so he was the one that was like I think really just like kind of leading it. And so I enjoyed that dynamic. I think with Side by Side, I was like a little bit more of an even playing field. Like I wrote lyrics to the song Look Back or I was just but I wasn't the guy as far as songwriting for sure. I think like Eric and Jules really drove that. Um, but throughout different bands I've played in, like there's just been, there's moments and there's roles and like, ultimately the people that wanted to just do it all or whatever, or like front their own band ultimately did it. Like Mike Judge played drums in Youth Today. He left to start Judge. He had some shit to say. He wanted to say it, and he had some ideas for songs and a vision and all that. So he did it. Or Walter, with Gorilla Biscuits, ultimately starting Moondog and then Quicksand and then, Rival Schools and all that. So like it's a progression, right? Like you get a job and then you realize, fuck, I want to start my own company or something. Or you don't, or you dig the job or the company works because of the different roles.
Yeah. What was it like you being a fan of Youth of Today? Like, how did you get into the band? Like, did they kind of just randomly approach you or?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Purcell and I were really tight, and like Luke and Walter were really tight, and Mike was playing, and he was leaving the band, and so there was talk of a new drummer, and so there was like an audition, and Purcell was really pulling for me because we were bros, and like I think I auditioned at Giant Studios, this place on 14th Street, and maybe Luke auditioned, maybe someone else, I think I heard, but ultimately I got it, and it was, yeah, it was really exciting. It was like a dream come true. Like again, I was a super fan. Like I loved, I saw Youth Today before I was in the band and just like it was so good and loved it. So um yeah, that was exciting.
Was there ever like a time where, like Youth of Today's touring a ton and there would either be like a scheduling conflict or like not like hostility, but maybe like a little like animosity towards like you because like, oh, I'm also in this band, I have to play with them, or
It
was it
wasn't
okay?
that bad, honestly, for me back then, and I don't think my bands were really overlapping, as crazy as it sounds now. Like Side by Side, just trying to remember, like I think we kind of broke up by the time that I was in Youth of Today. Youth of Today kind of broke up by the time that I was in Judge. Um, playing on that Shelter EP was really just kind of playing on the recording for the No Compromise 7-inch. Project X was really just like a project. We probably played like 5 shows or something.
Hmm.
So it wasn't that much of a conflict. I know with some other bands, I'd heard stories and there was scenarios where like, yeah, like this member might have gotten stolen from this band. And, looking back at the time, it was a big deal. Like, oh my God, like you stole my bass player or whatever. But it's pretty stupid. Like looking back, I mean, again, like we weren't touring a lot. There was not a conflict, but it's just has to do with, I think, that kind of being young sort of mentality. Whereas now, for the most part, like it's it's things overlap now, and it is a little hectic now for me and a few people that play in a lot of bands. You know, Walter plays in a lot of bands as well, and so but we're adults, so we just figure it out. Like it's not, you just got to manage your calendar, your schedule.
Yeah. When you were like 18, 19, did you know that you just wanted to be a drummer? Like there was no really like other option for a career? Or was there a time where you were like, okay, maybe I need to go to college or do the next
Yeah.
step?
No, there was a clear time where I was like, all of a sudden high school's over and some of my friends who were maybe, I had a lot of friends like also just like a year or two older than me, some close friends, and they were like going to college, and then I'm like, shit, I guess I gotta like go to college. I guess I gotta like grow up. I gotta figure it out a little bit. Um, and I did. I went to the new school in New York. They had like a jazz program, and I was like, I guess I'll just like go here. And it was cool. I went for about a year and a half, and I was feeling that stress a little bit of like, what am I gonna do? And I had some like, I worked at a coffee spot and a clothing store, and I've had like all different kinds of little restaurant odd jobs and this and that. Um, but around that time, and I was still playing. Like I was trying to just think of that time. Like hardcore, the scene kind of ended for a lot of us. Like it just changed. There was a lot of violence that came into the scene around the early 90s in New York. And the bands just like a lot of the core bands kind of broke up and everyone was sort of going through this transitional time for the most part. And so that's when I was like, yeah, shit, I have to go to college. But I'd also had like a band, kind of a grunge band with Ian Love, who played in rival schools with me. That band was called Loaded. A friend of mine asked me if I wanted to be in his reggae band. I did this band 32 Tribes. We were playing like colleges and like, wetlands and different clubs in New York that were like more like reggae ska kind of things. And it was just sort of a transitional time. But the point I'm getting at is right around then is sort of when like Green Day and The Offspring and these like punk bands kind of like blew up, and all these major labels were like, oh my God, like punk is massive. And they were selling records, I guess. And so we formed this band Civ, not because of that, but we just had Walter from Gorilla Biscuits had this idea of doing this band Civ with Civ, who's the singer for Gorilla Biscuits, because Gorilla Biscuits had broken up. And so it was just like just a project. We were going to do EP, like just 7 inches. Like, well, let's do a 7 inch. We wrote two songs, Can't Wait Anymore, Et Tu Brute, did a 7 inch. And because of, I think, the climate of like punk just sort of exploding in mainstream, like MTV and all that, a friend of ours, a hardcore dude, this guy, Mike Gitter, he did A&R at Atlantic Records and he signed us to Atlantic. And so we got a record deal. So next thing you know, like I basically, I basically got out of I left college after a year and a half and I just started touring. We made a record and we toured the world.
Like you were playing like at that time before that, you're playing in all these different bands. They have a great following. There's a ton of different like small venues. Now you're kind of Civ gets signed and you're going to like bigger, like you're going to, like huge venues. You're playing at, festivals and such. Did you find it a lot different in terms of what you guys feel like personally fulfilled at that time?
It was different, but it was also like we were all ready for something a little different. I mean, if you think about it, that was like 94 and I started playing in like the hardcore scene in like 85. So it was like
Hmm.
9 years of like doing that,
Yeah.
which was or like I said, 91, I kind of stopped and I did some other like, grunge and reggae bands and different stuff. But no, for me personally, like I'd like when things constantly kind of evolve and I wouldn't really want to be doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over again. So the new experiences with Civ in the 90s they were exciting. And then there were a lot of like hardcore people that became adults that worked at some of these labels or were video directors or were publicists or were they were kind of around us still. So it wasn't totally foreign. It was definitely different. I mean, it's the major label system and you're like, yeah, MTV and now you have some money for some, a sound person or something and you can yeah, go to Europe and go to Japan. Civ went to Japan a lot, which was really cool. And played Hawaii, played Australia. Like, so it opened all these new chapters and experiences, which was great.
Did you find it difficult when you were in like all these different types of genres to like kind of like transition when you're playing?
No, I mean, my dad is a drummer, like I said, and he kind of raised me like that, thankfully. And also growing up in New York, you're just exposed to different stuff. So like I was a hardcore kid, but I was exposed to jazz and I really loved like the late 80s hip hop, scene in New York that was like totally exciting. Um, I liked reggae and I liked all different kinds of music. So that yeah, I like, like one of I'm like a Stuart Copeland. He's like one of my favorite drummers, like that, kind
Hmm.
of combining world beats and feel into rock, and just having that twist on it. Um, so I loved it actually. I need that as a musician just to be doing different, a little bit different, different stuff. And ultimately you have that's kind of what you do with hopefully with anything, right? You just sort of pull from different experiences, hopefully be as open-minded as possible, see what works for you, see what you like, and then you find your thing as you get older, you kind of hone in on that and fine tune it,
Well,
and run with it.
yeah. What was one project that like really fulfilled you that you really enjoyed at that time?
I mean, it was like I think they're all exciting in different ways. When we did Rival Schools, uh, which was like we were sort of starting to form it maybe in like 1999, and we recorded United by Fate in like 2001, I think it came out.
Hmm.
And that band was like again, it was like familiar because it's friends from hardcore. Like Walter and I were in Youth Today together, and like I knew Cash, he was in Civ with me for a little bit, and Ian Love is an old friend, and so there's that connection, but we were also kind of experimenting musically a little bit, and it was there were some ballads and there you could hear some kind of reggae elements to it, and but you could kind of hear that I think where there's a hardcore through line with
Hmm.
it, that spirit is there. So that was cool, and we like we were on Island Records and we had some money, we had a producer, we were able to go to a nice studio, we were able to work with this guy Rich Costi, mixed it, and so it was like just fulfilling on artistic and and then some level.
Did you ever get like any backlash for doing a project like that? That like you're like known as like the hardcore drummer or one of the most popular hardcore drummers. Now you're in more of like
Yeah.
a rock style band.
Yeah, I mean I think Civ when that came out there that threw people for like a little bit of a twist where like the song Can't Wait a Minute More maybe is like more of a pop song, and we were trying to pull from like a lot of British, the Jam and the Clash and the Buzzcocks and that kind of stuff, and so we were just into that, and I think that maybe there was some like backlash here and there, but I honestly like it just seems so dumb and closed-minded that
Hmm.
like, and there were always that those elements in hardcore which just was like so like not fun. What so I did see that, but I mean I looked at it more as a challenge, and it was just like it was fine. I don't mind throwing curveballs to like kids because like at the end of the day like I got into to punk first. Like I like that that free sort of spirit and that creative spirit, and to be able to do this or that. And there was a time, in the New York hardcore scene too, where you had all these different bands, with the Together 7 inch, and the way it is 7 inch has like Warzone, which is like, kind of more leaning like New York skinhead hardcore vibes. And then you got Youth Today, and then there was, Nausea, and then there was like, Gorilla Biscuits, and just like that mix is what makes music and the hardcore scene so special. So like as that started to disappear, it kind of got lame. So I was psyched to kind of, and I still am, to just throw
Yeah.
like little curveballs at people. And you
Did you,
see it now, I mean, more than ever. Like I just played this show in Oklahoma City, Flyover Fest, and like, there's bands with like samples, and these dudes are like rapping, and it's like, there's some more traditional hardcore bands, but there's definitely some, it's pretty all over the place now, which is cool. It's
yeah,
good.
I thought it was cool. John Moreland played, didn't he? I'm pretty sure John Moreland played.
Yeah.
He's like the folky.
I didn't get to
Americana.
see him, but I was intrigued. I was curious. I wanted to catch him.
Yeah, he has like hardcore roots. But I think it's cool too. Like I feel now, especially when I interview people that have been involved in like the 80s and 90s scene, it seems like now it's kind of more accepted to have like more of an eclectic bill. Like you have
Yeah.
an indie and a prog band, which I think that's cool. Did you ever feel like when you were in Civ signed to Atlantic, obviously one of like the biggest labels, did you feel like that limited your creativity compared to like other bands that you've been a part of? Like, was there like a time where you were like, they came to you, hey, we need this song, and this is the kind of song we need?
Not really. I mean, they were pretty hands off, and if anything, they allowed us to like be more creative, just because there was like some budget, so we didn't really have to have jobs as much, and could go to like these big studios and have some freedom. Um, the second record, the Civ record, the pressure might have been on brought on us. Like we might have just like wanted to yeah you yeah you want to like deliver. Yeah, you just want to make great music, I guess, and connect on, it's being on a major label. Like one thing I learned, maybe I learned it too late, but like you don't really want to make like an obscure art record on a major label. Like you want to recognize the situation you're in, and the
Hmm.
idea is to try and create art, but also you're trying to reach some people. Um, but no, to answer your question, like no, there was never any pressure. I mean, there's people with ideas and this and that, but I think because we were hardcore kids and we'd been doing it already for so many years, we kind of were comfortable with like who we were. And we sort of, I mean, I'm sure there's those stories you hear about of like some kid that grows up in the woods and gets signed to Sony and all of a sudden is thrown into this machine. It's like, yeah, that's got to be tricky. But by the time Civ was on Atlantic, we had already made records and done stuff and seen things that worked and didn't work. And so like I felt like, and we were friends and we had just like a camaraderie that and like I said too earlier, like a lot of people that worked at the label were hardcore kids and they don't. So yeah, it was a really good environment. But yeah, I mean back to like the eclecticness too. I mean, we weren't the first ones to do it, and I think it's a natural progression. Like if you look back to, some of the stuff on Discord, right? Like going from Minor Threat to Embrace, or the first Dag Nasty record to the second Dag Nasty record, or just like the first Uniform Choice record to the second Uniform, or event like 7 Seconds, how they evolved, into from the first three records, like, and then some, like that. I think it's just natural, like the difference of who you are and then how you grow as a musician. And so for us, when the New York hardcore scene of the late 80s kind of, you know, died for some of us or just sort of stopped, then you get a band like Into Another. That's a real curveball from it underdog to Into Another, or from Grill Biscuits to Quicksand, or Civ. So we were all kind of going through it, and it was fun.
When did you know? Because you were saying earlier about how New York kind of got a little rough with like the hardcore scene and like violence. When did you kind of know that it was time to come back into those kind of like playing those kind of venues, playing at those kind of shows?
Playing like go back to being playing hardcore shows, you mean?
Hmm.
I mean, I think it just, it was all natural progression. I mean, technically, like Judge sort of came back in 2013 and we played the B&B Fest like 2 nights at Webster Hall. Like that made sense at the time for just a lot of different reasons. And and then Youth of Today coming back. But I think when like all of this more later wave, which I guess, yeah, it's already been like since 2010 or something. Um, by that point, the scene was just so different. Like it was just so global. The internet happened and like social media and like there's festivals now and like it just changed. So it did all make sense. Um, and I think as people too, we would all kind of like took enough years to just shit like get do other things and get form like an appreciation. Not say we never appreciated it or I never appreciated it, but just to like want it again. Like yeah, I want to play a Judge set. I want to play,
Hmm.
want to play Youth Today set. Not only do I want to play Youth Today set, but Ray does and Walter does and Purcell does. And then you test the water. Like you rehearse. Is it fun? Yeah, it's fun. Do these songs sound good? Shit, they sound good. They sound, in a way, they sound better than they did, because maybe we got better as musicians or something. And then do people care? And they do. Like people come, and so you know, that's a nice feeling. Um, but yeah, I think it's all just part of growing up.
Is there like a band now that you play with and you're like, wow, like the turnout's always been crazy. Like I was at your show with Youth of Today and like
In Philly,
yep, yep, at the Lithuanian Club. And
great show.
the second, the second Walter hit the guitar, it was like madness. Like, was that kind of just like a flashback too, to like
That
playing
was a
those?
really good one. That one felt old school. I mean, because it was so fucking hot and it was in this Lithuanian hall.
It was so
And
hot.
it, but that's kind of how we like it.
Yeah,
And so like you never really know when you're going to get a special one, whether it's now or back in the day. Like it just sort of like sneaks up on you a little bit. I mean, they're all usually good, but like sometimes you get a real special one. And so that's my goal. I mean, I kind of like book some of the bands and handle some of the logistics and like just trying to put ourselves in positions to win. You roll up
yeah,
to a club and the stage is 6 feet high and you say, fuck, this show's
yeah.
gonna like, it's not gonna suck, but it would be so much better if the stage was half the size. We're trying to play an all ages show or trying to play a no barricade show or something. Um, so yeah, but that Philly show was really special. There's been a couple, I mean, really standout shows that not to say they're better than back in the day, it's just different, but yeah, it's exciting because and it's part of what keeps us doing it.
Do you feel like straight edge as a whole, just to go back, sorry, a little bit, I
Yeah.
forgot, I want to ask this question. Did Going back to when the hardcore scene kind of got violent, coming back to, do you feel like straight edge kind of helped make it that movement becoming more normalized and people appreciating it more? Do you think that helped with the violence and stuff?
Yeah, sorry, I got this plane flying over my head again.
Oh, you're good.
Um,
I can't hear a thing.
well, I mean, like hardcore was always, violent in a way, like especially the New York hardcore scene, like before I was hanging out, like, hearing all these stories of just, back in the day stuff, and it was definitely rough. And there's always that element to it, which uh, you know, sometimes is justified, sometimes it's not. But yeah, it just got like at the time in for me, like in 91 or something, it got, yeah, just like kind of violent. Coupled with me probably just, again, I'd been in it for 5 or 6 years and just wanted to, evolve and do some other stuff. But straight edge, like, yeah, like it in a way it kind of felt like it died a little bit. But then I think it came back in the 90s. I was sort of playing in Civ and we were like doing, like Warp Tours and all this other stuff and touring a lot. But so I sort of missed that wave of it. But I mean, definitely like Earth Crisis and some of these bands um, were really carrying that torch. And it's always been there. I think now it feels like it's sort of bigger than ever in a
Hmm.
way. I feel like straight edge is like really big, which is great. It's such an awesome, no matter how you cut it, it's a great thing. I mean, I'm a dad, so like my daughter's 16. I mean, to be for a kid to find straight edge is really is there's nothing bad about it.
Yeah, I think I totally agree too with like you saying that a lot of people are like straight edge or becoming straight edge, especially like by me, like the New Jersey hardcore scene is very, very straight edge. Like all the newer
Yeah.
bands, majority of them are straight edge. And I think it's nice too. I'm personally not straight edge,
Yeah.
but not that like I don't really like drink or do it. I don't know. I just like never like adapted it. But it's cool to see how that kind of brought people together and it continues to bring people together too. Like that whole movement.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the real magical time for me, one of the magical times was New York City, 1987, the Together 7-inch, The Way It Is comp comes out. There's shows at CB's, there's shows at the Pyramid. You've got this eclectic mix of, Token Entry and Underdog and Youth Today and Gorilla Biscuits and Side by Side and Warzone and, many other bands. And some were straight edge and some weren't. And there, but it all worked
Hmm.
and it was fine. And like, you know, ultimately to each his own. But the fact that like a positive movement exists, like straight edge is cool.
I want to get into you've being a part of so many different like underground alternative hardcore bands, not as more mainstream music, but then you played a show with Patti Smith, and you
Hmm.
were featured on the Limp Bizkit record for
Hmm.
drums. Can you guys just take us through both of those, like how you got invited to play with either of those like super well known and respected bands?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it ties to just my like open-mindedness to, whatever life sort of brings you. It's kind of that's sort of how I was like brought up, I guess. And maybe it's, growing up in New York or whatever, but it's just like I mean, definitely growing up in New York, like shit would happen. You'd walk down the street, you meet someone who's a photographer, they're doing a fashion campaign. Next thing you know, you got in this fashion campaign and you made, $500. Like that
Hmm.
kind of stuff happened. Or like I was in a commercial or just like random shit, good and bad
Yeah.
in New York. So I was sort of wired like that, and I am. And so they were both very different. Like to the Limp Bizkit thing to back it up a little bit was this guy, Mike Gitter, who was Triple X fanzine from Boston, ended up becoming an A&R guy at Atlantic, signed Civ. We became, we were friends. And he ended up at Roadrunner Records, and they did a record, like a imprint label with Ross Robinson, the producer, who did like Korn and Slipknot and Limp Bizkit and a bunch of stuff. And they came across this demo for this band Glassjaw, signed Glassjaw. The drummer wasn't working out, needed a drummer. My friend Mike Gitter recommended me. Next thing you know, I'm playing drums in Glassjaw, and we make this record, Everything You Wanted to Know About Silence, the first Glassjaw record. And through that, I became friends with the producer. And so then, maybe 2 years later or something, or no, maybe 3 or 4, but like, um, I was actually visiting LA. I got hired to play drums for this band, A Static Lullaby. It's like a screamo band. It's just like a
Hmm.
session, like hired gun kind of thing. And it was cool. And I was in LA, and Ross hit me up and said, "Hey, what do you think about the LB?" And I was like, "What is the LB?" It's like Limp Bizkit. It's like they want their drummer is like not doing good, can't play, and they want to make a heavy record. And I told him about you, and so I met him, got the gig, made the record, was in the band for like 5 days. Then I was out of the band, and then it was supposed to be an album. It ended up being an EP, but it came out. It's called The Unquestionable Truth Part One, and it was a really wild experience. It was just a fun life experience. We went to this really beautiful studio, and they had this like vegetarian chef, and they're all good dudes and really good players. And so that was fun. And then I was playing in a band called Nightmare of You at the time, so I kind of went back to, just doing that, which was fine. And
Hmm.
but then when I was living on McDougal Street in Greenwich Village, McDougal and Bleecker, and this kid that I went to high school with lived down the street, and he was dating Patti Smith. And I would see Patti because she lived on Houston and McDougal, and I would just sort of see her walking sometimes.
Yeah.
And I'd see the two of them together. And he asked me one day, he said, "Hey, our drummer's like away, and we've got to play this like benefit show. Do you want to play it?" I was just like, "Oh my God, okay, sure." And to be honest, like I didn't really know Patti Smith's music. I mean, I knew of her, but I just kind of missed it. I didn't ever, she wasn't totally on my radar. Um, but we rehearsed together, and we played this concert at this school on Irving Place. And it was pretty wild. It was like kind of like I really wish there was some photos or like a video, but I have the set list somewhere.
Oh, that's cool.
But it was cool. Yeah, I mean that, and again, like that's just my thing with life of like you kind of got to be open. It behooves you to be open, and because you never know what life's gonna throw at you.
Is there a band now that you've been a part of so many different like you've been a part of so many different bands. Is there a band now that like you would love to do like a fill-in for or that you're playing like or like an all-time band?
I mean, I saw Oasis the other day at the Rose Bowl in California, and like
Hmm.
80,000 people. And that drummer's
Yeah.
just sort of, he was good, and he was working back there, but it was like a little bit more just chill. Like that kind of gig would be really fun for a next chapter.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Um,
feel like you'd spice it up a little bit.
yeah, I mean, going back like to what I was saying earlier, like I like when things evolve to not be doing the same stuff. So yeah, to have some kind of thing like that where all of a sudden I've never really experienced that. I've opened like Civ opened for No Doubt at like uh arenas,
Hmm.
and I've had that experience. I've been in those places. Civ opened for Kiss at Madison Square Garden, like that was really sick. Like, but to be like in a band like that would be really a wild trip. I was hoping that the Foo Fighters would call me. I was waiting by the phone, it never rang.
Fair enough. I feel like everyone wanted that gig.
I mean, to be honest, those guys that get those gigs, like the Tool gig and the Slipknot gig and all that, like those guys are very, very good. It's another level of skill set.
You would definitely fit in. I don't know
Thank you.
what mask would you wear if you were in Slipknot though.
Right. Like a gerbil. No, I don't know. I don't know if that would
Gerbil.
fly. Maybe that's why I didn't get the gig.
Heck, I don't know. Corey would probably be pissed.
Yeah.
So playing so long, like what makes you like want to continue? Is it just that creativity? Like you're still having new records coming out and just producing and going to different things?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like I've been deep in playing with my bands that have records from a long time ago, and so I would like to do more new stuff, and we talk about like rival schools doing some new stuff, and um, even just like a brand new project like that's it's important to do and it's fun. I guess when I moved to LA, I guess it's already been like a while now, but I mean, I did this band World Be Free
Hmm.
with Scott Vogel from Terror and Andrew from Strife and a bunch of people, and then I did this band Constant Elevation with Vinny from the Movie Life. And so those new projects, although they were like straight up hardcore projects and they're good, you should check them out. Like, but that was fun just to do something new. It's like, wow, like this didn't exist. And I put a lot of effort and time and into it and then it exists. And so that's a cool feeling. So I'm due for that. So I don't really have a place to rehearse, to play drums. I don't really have a studio. I mean, I go to like some hourly places sometimes, and I got to travel to hook up with some of my guys, but it'll happen for sure.
One of my favorite records is United by Fate. Like I absolutely love that record.
Cool. Thank
When
you.
if you did something with rival schools again, do you feel like you guys would try to make it sound heavier or still kind of keep your sound of rock
I mean,
hardcore and
me
like
personally, I think Rival Schools, what I like about it is that it's sort of like, yeah, we could pick up where we left off and it could be an extension of Pedals or United by Fate, or we could just really do whatever we want in a way. Like it's sort of
hmm
a clean slate, I think, because we just kind of left a bunch of doors open with different types of songs, Racing the Red Lights, where or like Choose Your Adventure or Holding Sand, or like there's just like different sounds. And I think no matter what we do, the cool thing about doing music for a long time is like you have your sound. Like we have a sound when, we'll jam sometimes at sound checks or whatever and come up with ideas. And it's still, no matter what it is, it sounds like us, because we have a sound, which is cool. That's kind of what you strive for, I think, as a band. Um, but yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah,
No,
I mean,
you did. You did.
yeah,
Going to now, like you're
yeah.
still playing drums, but then you're also a part of like Trust Records.
Yeah, I
How
work. Yeah.
how did you get into that role? Like what made you want to kind of go more to like a I don't want to say executive role, but not as for playing.
I mean, to go back to what I was saying about like being open-minded and down for like whatever life experiences, whatever life throws you, like depending upon if you're into it. Like when I moved to LA 13 years ago, a friend of mine offered me a job at this ad agency doing like music and brand like partnerships, like really mainstream like job stuff. And my daughter was 2 at the time, and it was like a job with health insurance. But my friend was there, and it was fun, and it was a really good experience. Got into, events and marketing and content creation and like storytelling and all this kind of stuff. And we would film a lot of artists and do interviews on like a real mainstream kind of level. And then I went to this other agency for a little bit, but I got burnt on that and started helping Jordan at Revelation Records and working at Rev, doing like, I guess like marketing, but also signing a few bands. Brought in like Spaced and like Painted Black and a bunch of different bands and yeah, just helping with we launched a new website and a lot of social media stuff. And then my friends started this label Trust Records, which is sort of like a preservation kind of label. It's more of like putting out older records that have been released that might not be in print or on a label that might not be around anymore, or the label's not like really just in doing anything with the band's records and the rec and the it's typically where the artists own the records. And so we'll partner with these different bands and we'll put it out. So it's Circle Jerks, SSD, 7 Seconds, Aggression, Style Lock 13, Hepcat, most recently Ink and Dagger. And but with that is like, well, there's so much storytelling opportunity, right? Like you
Hmm.
or that should be there. If the idea is preservation, then I want to see like, I mean anybody could die tomorrow, but you want to, so what are you going to leave? Like what's the story? I want to film Keith Morris. So had like an interview with Keith Morris and Kat from Scal talking for like an hour. And that's part of this like series that we do. And just different things like that to, just help um really like attract a younger audience, because you got to put it out there. I think it's important. In the same way that my bands play, like, the more youth today plays, like there's more potential for younger kids to get into it, which is cool because it's a cool message and it's a cool band. And so I feel the same way a lot about the Trust Records releases. It's like you got to really wave the flag. And so those, Revelation and Trust, and coupled with the bands I get to play drums with, like um that's kind of what I've been doing.
What kind of brought forward to having Ink and Dagger kind of like do the reissues and stuff? Because obviously, like being from Philadelphia, there's such a huge piece of hardcore history, but more specifically, like the Philadelphia scene.
Yeah.
What kind of prompted that?
My Joe Nelson, who kind of runs operations at Trust, like he really took brought that one in. And so I kind of like defer to him. I wasn't really that hip to it, to be honest. I'd always heard of them, but it wasn't really on my radar. So I didn't really quite know. But Don DeVore, right? Like
From
Joe
Frail
and
and
Don
yep.
were talking a lot. And I had met Don through Walter. I think we might have jammed once. And so just, chatted with him and um but basically it all kind of through a lot of like work with really that Joe did with those guys with Don, and then like setting up the shows and deciding what to put out, and really like following their lead a little bit as far as like the aesthetic, which is I like it when bands kind of drive their own message ideally, because
Yeah.
that's what it's what you want. But no, the reception was great and people were really excited. The record sold well and the show sold out, and like so it was I love, for me, like, yeah, to learn about bands that I might have missed. It's nice.
The shows were crazy. From all the pictures that I saw, they were absolutely crazy. And I do appreciate, especially I love like physical media, like we all do. We all love records and merch and stuff, but Ink and Dagger does have a great aesthetic, but not only that, I really like their on-stage presence. Like they do like after I forget what song it is, but they like all lay down and pretend like they're like dead. And then they have like their resurrection for the encore. Like stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
it's cool that they do things like that. Sets the
Yeah.
scene.
I mean, I've never been in a band that was kind of like Halloween darkness vibes. It seems
Hmm.
like a fun thing to be in because you just know you could pull from that shit. Like if you're the
Yeah.
Misfits or, you know, any kind of band that can really pull from that. Like it's cool. It's never gonna get old, like to have like crazy makeup on and lights and wild shit.
Just to leave you with one more question, is
Yeah, man.
there anything that you're working on now or any like upcoming shows and tours that you're just really looking forward to going to?
I mean, there's some talk of a festival in Jakarta in May, which should be interesting. I was there once with Judge, but that's kind of interesting. I'm going back to Tokyo with Youth of Today next month, which I'm excited about. I was there last year with Rival Schools. I just love Japan,
Hmm.
and I think Rival Schools is going to go to South America in February.
That's cool.
So that's all, it's a bunch of stuff coming in. I'm trying to think if there's something really specific. I think there's going to be some stuff in Europe in May and June, and I'm looking forward to that. And it's a good time of year to be in Europe, and maybe my wife and daughter can cruise over, and yeah,
Well, that's
All
awesome.
that. And I know you're going to Europe too, man. Have a good trip.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much for coming on. I really do
Of
appreciate it.
course, man. Definitely. Let me keep me posted on the whenever you're announcing all this and keep it up.
Will do. Thank you. And guys, down below, there'll be a ton of links to Youth of Today, Rev, Trust, and all that stuff. Till next
Awesome.
time, guys. Thank you.
Cool. Peace.